Happy Wednesday, everybody. This is Diane Covington. Oh, my goodness. It's August the 4th already. Hard to believe. I'm going to share something with you, and I really hope you can take some notes. This is something that may apply to you right now because we just are starting a new month. But if it doesn't apply to you now, I guarantee you it'll probably apply to you sometime in the next couple of months, and I think it's a tool that you will find very, very, very helpful. So my goal is to have you shrink your frustration gap. So your frustration gap is from where you are to where you want to go. And to make that gap smaller and smaller and smaller, because the gap between where you are and where you're trying to go and you can't seem to get there, that's what they call the frustration gap. It's from where you are, just like, well, if my goal is to sell 2,000, why am I not getting to 2,000? So it's helped shrink that gap, okay? So it might be that you need to increase your activity and possibly enhance your skill set, or you might need to just set a less imposing goal, therefore just decreasing the pressure in your frustration gap. So you've got some options. So let me role play with you just a little bit, and I'm really hoping this will help all of you. Now, the one thing I am going to ask is that have a mentor. If you do not have a director or you are in the go-give area and you don't have a national that you're tied to, find somebody who could be either a running partner or somebody who is where you want to go. It doesn't have to be a national. It doesn't have to be a trip-winning director or whatever. Find somebody, though, that stretches you. Don't have it be your recruit, okay? So typically it's going to be your director or your senior director or your soon-to-be national or whatever. It's going to be somebody usually higher on the food chain, I want to say. Okay, so let's get down to this. So let's just say you're new and you set a goal, and then for some reason you didn't get the results that you were looking for. Okay, so that's the scenario. You might get embarrassed and not want to say anything. You might feel pressure from your significant other. You might feel guilty. I should have done that. You might even be disenchanted with Mary Kay. Oh, this doesn't work, or no one wants to wash their face, or whatever the story is you're saying. So all of those could be scenarios. So let's look at how we close that frustration gap. So the first step I would say is it possible that you didn't follow through with your plan? So your goal was to, let's say, do a certain number, and so that's a possibility, right? So if you set a goal and then for some reason you didn't get the results you're looking for, right? It could be that you just didn't follow through with your plan, right? Something personal might have come up, or your time management skills, or maybe your self-discipline skills played a factor. Or maybe you need to enhance your skill set. So maybe you're holding parties, but your sales are really, really low, or you're booking parties, but they're not holding. You can have 5 on your books, but then none of the 5 are holding. So that's a skill set issue. So the important part is that you convey your frustration to your mentor. Because, gang, we don't know that you're frustrated if you don't say something. Now, you might think, well, she should be able to pick that up. No, not necessarily, because it could have been a bad day with your kids. It could have been a disagreement with your significant other. It could be somebody that's really important to you is absolutely unsupportive of your business. I remember the first, I think it was the first Christmas or the second Christmas that my sister Janice and I were both in Mary Kay. My mom went to the department store and she bought my other sister like this $300 box of skincare and cosmetics and gave it to her at Christmas. And we're looking at each other like, are you kidding me? So you could let something like that rattle your cage, or you could just say, what I mean, right? So back to this is that I want you to know you've got to convey your frustration gap. Okay. And I want to help you figure out how do you determine what it's going to take to shrink that frustration gap, right? So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and I would suggest if you can jot these down. So my first question is it based on activity? So is your frustration gap partially or mainly based on activity? For example, let's say your goal was to make 20 booking calls during the week. So you set your goal on Monday that before Friday, you're going to make 20 booking calls during the week. Doesn't matter how many a day, as long as by the end of the week you have 20. But then after you and I talk for a little bit, I find out that you actually made 5 calls for the whole week instead of 20. So then my next question will be to ask you to determine why did you not make the calls and then figure out a solution. So I might ask you things like, is this a time management issue? Is this Maybe a child care issue. If you've got 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, however many kids at home, is it that you just can't get enough uninterrupted time to make 4 or 5 calls a day? Is this something even more pronounced than that? Is this some other issue? So you could even dig a little deeper, and I might ask you, if you're doing the effort and you're not getting enough results, what do you think that is? So if you feel like you're really doing the 20 calls, but you're not getting enough results, so that would be another thing to look at and say, well, so what would that look like? So if that was the case and your goal was to make 20 calls and you made 5 calls, okay, is it that you don't want to get on the phone because you don't know what to say, so you need a script, or you don't want to sound like a script, but the only way you're going to get smooth is to make calls, and your 3rd call will be different than your 1st, which will be different than your 5th, and by your 10th, you've got this down. So let's say we determine that you need to increase your activity, or maybe you need to learn a skill, right? So you might say, great, well, I'm ready to do it now, or maybe you're going to say, I'm not ready to do it now. So the important thing is determine whether it is a skill-based thing, like I don't know what to say, or it's like I know what to say, I'm confident I can do this, I just have 3 kids at home that don't all seem to nap at the same time, or whatever the case may be. Does that sort of make sense? So listen for opportunities, or share with your director or mentor things that you think might be areas for improvement or opportunities for improvement. Like you might say to her, hey, could I listen to you make booking calls this week? Could I just be a fly on the wall? Like, can you just call me on Zoom, or can I jump on Zoom on the computer and then you make phone calls, even though you can't hear the other person? I'd love if she could put it on speaker. You could hear her make booking calls. So listen for times when you have opportunities to improve that, okay? And then the other thing is your mentor or coach may want to teach you or demonstrate to you what is lacking. So let's just say it is time management. It's like, okay, but you have to have that awareness, because we can say, well, I think it's time management, but if you don't think it's time management, then you might not be open to seeing that. Does that make sense? So if we've determined that you need to increase your activity, and you're ready to do it now, then you might say things like, okay, so what am I going to do? And this is where it comes down to bite-sized chunks, right? Bite-sized. You don't have to see the whole staircase, just the first step, the famous Martin Luther quote. So what's my focus for the next 24 hours? What's my next step? It would be like, well, I'm going to see if the neighbor can watch my older, play with one of my kids can go to the neighbors for 1 hour while little Johnny takes a nap, so that I can go and I can get on the phone for 1 hour and make those calls. So it's looking at what is it you want to do and figuring out if it's a time thing, a skill-based thing, it could be a mindset. It could be no one's going to say yes to me because I'm not pretty enough to be a consultant, or whatever the tape is you're telling yourself. But I want you to know that your mentor, coach, or director will always be there and be ready for you. Always, always, always. But in the meantime, I want you to feel like you're winning. And winning for you is going to be different than winning for someone else, okay? So let's just go back to recap. If you're setting a goal and you're not getting where you want to go, you can get frustrated. So then you've got to ask yourself, if I'm setting a goal and for some reason I'm not getting the results, whether you feel embarrassed, husband pressure, whatever, just ask yourself, is it that I just didn't follow through with my plan, or is it a skill set? Because those are like 2 different forks in the road. And then based on that, and you may not even know that, but I promise you, if you call your director and let her know that you've got a frustration gap you want to close, because I'll tell you what, when your frustration gap is really, really tiny, this business is so simple, so fun, and so in the flow. And then when you do have a blip, like, I don't know, somebody doesn't want to purchase Mary Kay anymore because they're switching to brand something, whatever, it's just a blip. It's not a big deal, because you are being your true, authentic self and making a difference in the lives of the people who want you in their life. So with that said, I hope this is helpful. I hope you will be aware of, if you have a frustration gap, maybe your frustration gap is all around team building. And the mindset is, well, I really want to do 3 sharing appointments a week, but last week you didn't do any. So it's like, okay, so let's talk about that. Do you know how to set up a sharing appointment? Do you know what to say to even set it up? Do you know how to invite? Do you know what to cover? Do you know what questions to ask? So, and how many can you do with your mentor, your director? So these are all things that I think will make your flow be very different. So I want to thank you for calling into Quantum Leap. Have an amazing Wednesday. And you guys, please feel free to post on our Facebook page called Quantum Leap Hotline anything that you've used as a tool to make yourself more aware of the frustration gap. So, because it'll help we can help each other. All right. Thanks, you guys, and have a great day.